Every man has his heroes, and every life is made up of stories. Heroic Stories is a series from heroicmen.org to find out why some men choose the harder path in life, even when it means losing everything, how they survived, and who they are today. These men seem heroic to us, even if they don't call themselves that. They seem to have an extra strength in their system, extra grit to battle doubt and find purpose. All of these men are seeking divine friendship with God, and they all believe in building up faith, building up men, and building up our future. Sponsored by CatholicSpeakers.com and hosted by Dominic from Heroic Men, get the mindsets, the scars, and the playbooks that these men have earned the hard way. Heroism isn't born, it's made, and these are their stories. Hi friends, and welcome back to Heroic Stories. I'm fortunate to be joined by John Henry from LifeSite News. John Henry, it is good to have you with us. You are a busy guy with a lot going on. You run a massive, a news network. And so it's good to take a moment to sit down with you and let's meet the man behind the mission and understand more about heroism, which is a shared topic that we have with our audience of men who are seeking heroism, trying to understand how it seems today simply showing up and trying to be a good man feels heroic just to try to meet that level. So I want to ask you, first question to kick this off, a story of heroism that absolutely lights you up. It could be from the news or from your own life or somebody you know or from fiction. When somebody goes, hey, let's do a round of heroic stories, and what's a story that absolutely lights you up?
Well, it's one that actually probably wouldn't occur to most people. It's not someone who does something absolutely crazy like jump out of an airplane or go and rescue someone in the field of battle or something like that. There's a lot of those, but my own is very personal because my own is that of my father. My father was probably very untraditional in terms of most things. He was an older guy when he got married. He was considering the Catholic priesthood at first, and he felt very much called to get married. Like, in fact, heard it in a church, marry Rosie, his to-be wife. Did that, and that's how I was conceived and born, obviously. But the reason why my dad, Henry Westen, by the way, was heroic to me was because of how he lived and the cost he paid for it. Really? So he was, in Catholic parlance, it makes a big deal if you can say he was a daily mass, daily rosary kind of a Catholic, which I guess a lot of people might think extreme. Surely my mom thought that was extreme. And he didn't waver despite the blowback he got from, yes, my mom, also all of his kids. He had 3 children with my mom who all eventually grew up and into our teen years and really rebelled against it, as many do, against the faith and so on. But he didn't waver when his colleagues at work sort of made fun of him for being an extreme Catholic. He didn't waver. I'll tell you a story. I used to go to dance clubs, and I would come home at 1, 2, 3 in the morning, variously, and I would pass by his room, and I would see him sometimes kneeling there, sometimes falling asleep, slumped over, but still in a kneeling position on his bed. My response at the time, and I remember doing it, what a silly old man.
I was going to ask you, how did all that impact you as a young man growing up?
At the time, it didn't. It was sort of, you see it in passing. And I was particularly struck because my mom ended up leaving him partially because of this. Okay. You know, when I was 18, my mom left and he didn't waver. That example, that heroism, you could say, is what enabled me to turn around, because I was obviously living a life, especially after my mom left, of kind of craziness, going the way of the world, as you might expect. I got into trouble with the law, got into trouble with relationships and so on. Super unhealthy. But the only way I could turn around after having, I read a book that meant, it's either God's way or the highway. But I had convinced myself already for a number of years, really the God thing doesn't really exist. So I don't need to worry about it. I read the book, and it was a point of confrontation with my own sort of self-told atheism. And it was Dad's example, particularly the persecution that he received from my mom, from me, from my brother and sister, from his colleagues at work, from his other family members, that actually enabled me to turn around and see, wow, if he put up with all of that stuff, to put it politely, to persist with it, despite all this hell, this must be something, this must be the truth. And that's what I was sort of looking for. What is the truth? And I think we only get to see the truth in the crucible of suffering. That's why the message of the apostles was so powerful, because they were all killed for it. Who's going to go and get killed for some fake ideology? Who's going to go and get, run around preaching and not make lots of money and then be brutally killed to keep up with some kind of folklore thing you want to keep going? Sorry, it's not going to be 12 guys in a row. No way.
Mm-hmm. No kidding. Goodness. So, okay, talking about then this crucible of suffering, then to ask you a little more personally about yourself. Share, if you would, what is a moment that you look back on and you feel you were forced to, or you made a decision that perhaps felt heroic, perhaps at the time, maybe it was the wrong one, maybe it was the right one, and you learned something about that, you learned a truth, or you faced something in that crucible, like you say. What's a moment where you look back and you had to make an incredibly difficult decision, and then how did that impact you?
It's funny, all the decisions that I've made in my life that have been big in terms of, getting married and choosing a career path, if you will, and everything else, they post-conversion flow from that, from trying to live my life for Christ and to basically my only striving is for heaven. And so in terms of what I know I should be doing, I don't get there all the time because there's all sorts of stuff that gets in your way, sin being first and foremost, and then all the stuff in the world. But I'd say it was funny because right on my road to getting there, to giving my life over to Christ, there was a moment when I had to do something. I got involved. I was shoplifting and I was guilty, and it actually made it to court, and I was there. And all this time, I'm sort of struggling with, what do I do about this faith thing my dad's into? Am I going to do anything about it? And I sort of had to decide. And I remember struggling with that and saying, okay, my dad's got it right, but you have to act. And you have to act in a way that you might suffer for. So this is a court situation where police are coming in to testify against you for shoplifting. And I'm a young guy. I'm not,
how old are you at that time?
17, 18 years old.
Okay.
So I could be in a lot of trouble. And I'm sure the lawyer who was there was going to say, plead not guilty and whatever. But that would have been a falsehood. And so I had to sort of decide, this might cost me my future. It might cost me a lot, but I did it anyway. It was a funny thing. As soon as I saw the officer get into the court, I went up to him and I not only confessed to the crime, he already knew that, it wasn't a big deal, but I apologized to him, not in any terms of gaining favor from anything, just to set the record straight. And that look, I want to apologize. I want to say I'm sorry. And I know I did a wrong thing. And just need to say that it was a neat thing because I decided to act despite consequence, the consequences that could flow from it, which might wreck or destroy my future. I didn't know. I was a kid. And I think that was very instructive for me later on, because the decision to act despite possible negative consequences, negative earthly consequences, that is, really, I think had an impact on the rest of my life.
Amazing. I got to ask, so what happened after that and the rest of that story there?
The rest of that story was very interesting because it was, the case went forward. It was a guilty thing. And, I had to do community service and stuff like that. But it actually, it was for my benefit, obviously, but it was also something that was, I think, very instructive for me, because I was able to learn, wait a minute, the consequences that flowed actually weren't as bad. But not only that, I think there was I could see spiritual intervention that enabled me to actually grow from something, a real kind of punitive discipline that works, has an effect, and isn't life crippling. It's actually strengthening. It's actually putting you on the right path, which is what I think we'd hope for all sort of real kind of punitive things that go forward, hopefully for the good. So that's what it did for me. And I was truly grateful. I was most grateful, actually, that I took the step, and that enabled so much more in my life to continue taking those steps.
In that moment where you were deciding to take that step, what was going through your mind, or what was inspiring you to decide to do that in spite of potential blowback? Like you just described spending all this time out doing things and you walking by your dad's room and all. What was in you that would allow you, or was moving you to make it, to be able to make a decision like that at all, as opposed to just continuing to be the rebel against everything and be the wrong kind of hero in your own mind and keep pushing back on everything because life was unfair and stuff, which is what we all do, so
Yeah.
much of us do. Yeah. What was
Yeah.
going on in your mind and in your heart to where you could make a decision like that? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
It's very much calculation. Um, I'm pretty, my wife would tell you he's black or white, all or nothing. And so it was very calculated. When I was a young man and left the practice of faith with my dad and everything else, I thought, I want the most from life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe what's going on here. I'm enticed by all this stuff. And it was the typical story of a young man in this growing up in the city, found porn in the laneway, and just you get off into that world. That's what it was for. It was for getting the most I could. And what really went through my head and what changed everything was truth. What is truth? Because it's still about the achieving of what you want, but the what you want changes. If it's a reality, it's kind of like Pascal's wager, if you've ever heard of that.
For those who haven't, can you give us a quick overview?
Yes, the mathematician Pascal, he basically said, look, if it's true that heaven is real and it's eternal bliss without end, that nothing on earth can compare to, and it's true that the opposite possibility of eternal suffering forever in hell is also there, no glory, no temporal pleasure you can get on earth, even if you live for 110 years with the best of everything in every sphere, is ever going to satisfy enough to have you not reach heaven or to have you touch hell. So that's Pascal's wager, basically, in layman's terms. But that's also the very realistic thought of the calculation that makes you decide, no, I'm going to do this. Because even if there's a slight chance that that stuff is real, there's no way. And I have to say, at the time, I was thinking, looking at my dad, thinking, boy, that's a crappy life. Everybody hates him, like everybody. And it's not true. It wasn't everybody, but a lot of people. And he suffered a lot. It is true. But living the life on the other side, once you accept it, once you go through sort of that wall of, I'm going to do it because it's real, you got to also see that the beauty of eternal life isn't only in eternity. It's actually here. Mm-hmm. See, I should have lived a crappy life full of what I was used to, doling out myself, selfishness, and only about me and nothing about other people. And even when I came back, I should have been like the prodigal son, like, I'm unworthy to be your child. Treat me as one of your hired servants, because at least I'll get something instead of being starving and feeding the pigs the pods that I would love to eat myself. But what happens is God's super generous. And he says, here, come on in. Put my ring upon your finger. Put my robe upon him. And he did. He let me come back in, try to follow my dad's example in faith. He let me marry a beautiful woman, and now we have 8 beautiful children, and was able to found LifeSite News and Sign of the Cross Media. And it's just, so the wonder, the glory of it is not only in the afterlife, it's here as well. It's hard to tell that to people who aren't there yet, but it is there. It will look like you're suffering, like my dad did, and like everyone who lives for the faith does. But there's a joy in that suffering. It is still suffering. Don't get me wrong. The pains are real and the betrayals are real, but it's true. You have a support, a joy of God in your heart that it doesn't exist on the other side. Having lived both sides, I can tell you that when you're on the other side, that guilt and feeling of like living a lie and all that, you don't have that when you're living for the truth. And you feel unworthy. You feel like, wow, because you're in a great company of beautiful saints and angels and also holy Catholics who are around, but it's a beautiful family.
Amazing.
And for the most part, you're really accepted in that family and given a lot of joy.
So my next question, you've already half answered it. So the question is, who are your heroes? How do you orient yourself in life as a man? You keep coming back to your father. So I really would like to understand, if you know, or if you wish to share a bit more of maybe some of your father's story. What was it? Why did he become the man that you saw growing up? What happened to him such that he made those kinds of decisions and then held to them no matter what came at him or what walked away from him? Why was he the man that he was?
It's an interesting question. He was one of 6 kids, born in 1928. He was born actually in Canada. They were immigrants from Germany in the early 20s. They came over from Germany already. I think they had 4 or 5 children. And then when they came over, they had my dad, and they had up to the 6th child. And then my dad's dad passed away.
And this is in the middle of the Depression, Great Depression, wasn't it? Between the wars.
Well, yeah. If you can believe it, it's right around 1933. And my Oma, my dad's mom, now a widow, takes her 6 children. It was 5 then because their one brother died in just after childbirth. Takes them back to Germany.
Okay.
So she takes them to the border. It's actually in Holland on the border of Germany. And so you can imagine what that means. That means these little kids see untold horror, and then nearly starve to death. And it was because they were on the Dutch-German border. They would, in order not to starve to death, they actually took cigarettes that they lined their pockets of their jacket with, and would ride their bikes, no rubber on the tires, by the way, because all the rubber was being used for the war effort, to the German side to trade for potatoes from farmers. On one of those excursions, they were stopped by the Nazi police. And then they threw my Oma, my grandmother, my dad's mom, in jail. And at this point, I think my dad is probably, I don't know, a kid of like 13, 14.
Sorry,
So
I might have missed a beat. The Germans were receiving the cigarettes and they put your grandmother in jail?
They would, if they got to the farmers would trade potatoes for cigarettes. And so they didn't get there. They got stopped by police at the border. And then they took my grandmother, my Oma, into prison. And they said to my dad, a little boy at the time, see ya. And now they took the bikes away. They took all the stuff they had, and it's cold. And my Oma can't be with him because she's in jail. So my dad's mom is gone, and he's walking back, and he thinks he's going to freeze to death and starve to death. And, they were religious. They were Catholics at the time of war. So I'm sure they're all praying, but he described it to me as, well, he thought he was going to die. There was no way to get back, a long, long distance over probably a couple of days. He didn't have a bike anymore. And so he went to walk along the river road, and he honestly thought he was going to die. And he prayed earnestly. And you know that if you actually get to the end of your life, imagine how you'd pray with the kind of earnestness and urgency, like you give it all you have. And there came along a car. And it's impossible because there's no cars driving. What's going on? And he was an army officer. And the army officer says, where are you going? And he sort of says what happened. And the army officer says, yeah, I'm going along that way. So he gets in. They stop at a restaurant on the way. My dad eats like they just hadn't eaten for years. Wow. And then he takes his napkin and takes as much food as he can home, stuffing all his pockets with the bread and whatever else, and brings it back to the other 4 siblings that are at home. And for him, that was a turning point. For him, that was not only is God real, but even in the moments of the most peril where you're completely lost, he's there for you. And Dad, I don't know what else did it for him. I know Catholics have something called True Devotion to Mary. St. Louis de Montfort is the great saint who wrote this book. But it's basically learning how to love our Lord Jesus Christ in imitation of Our Lady, in imitation of his mother Mary, who we know conceived him miraculously. He was conceived without any human intervention. She was, bore him in her womb and everything else, and then lived with him, for him, throughout all her life till the moment of his crucifixion, in which this mom offered herself. So my dad had that kind of a devotion, and it was his life for him. So in life, in married life, in everything he did, that's what was reflected. So you had this constancy of, he lives his life for this one thing. It means everything to him. You can tell. I mean, as a kid, Dad died now about 16 years ago. I can't remember a conversation with my own dad when he wasn't in some way angling to bring it back to the faith. And he got to experience joy too. He watched his wife leave and all three of his children leave the faith. Mm-hmm. Before he died, he was able to continue to pray for his wife, but also to watch all of his children return to the faith. He was able to see 7 of our 8 children and 3 of my brother's 8 children before he died, and my sister become a Holy Catholic as well. So,
wow.
Yeah, there's lots there, but that was his motivation, and that was his. I think for him, it really, you can say raison d'être in the French, his whole reason for being, and for him, he would have only prayed that he lived that way, and I know he did. He probably wouldn't have said so.
Thank you. Gosh, what a story. I can see how all of that lines up. Those founding sort of moments helping to define your own life. And then was there anybody else, any of your own heroes, apart from your father, who have really impacted you?
Yes. So it's funny, LifeSite News was founded in 1997. And in 1993, I was really inspired by something. I went to World Youth Day in Denver. I had just come back to the faith, 92, 93, and wanted to meet other young Catholics who were really on fire for the faith. That was a hard thing to do. I grew up in Toronto, and really there wasn't much of young people in the church that I could see. And so I went to World Youth Day, and there it was. It was in Denver, so we went from Toronto, long trip and everything else. Met lots of great Catholics on the trip. But while there, I remember we were in a stadium, and at the bottom, they were doing what they called Stations of the Cross. And it was really weird because they had a woman depicting Jesus, and I thought that was weird. When I got home, something really neat happened. So we were kind of scandalized that there was a woman playing Jesus. It was kind of weird. But when I got home, here's what had transpired. There is a certain lady who founded the largest Catholic media apostolate ever in the history of the world. She is Mother Angelica, the founder of EWTN. And at that time, while I was there in the stands watching, EWTN carried all of the stuff that happened in the church. And they, at the station there, it's huge. It's all around the world. It's like there is no other. It's like CNN and ABC and NBC all combined in the Catholic world. So it's like the everything. Anyway, so there was Mother Angelica. They were airing the thing, and she saw the woman was playing Jesus. And she said to her sisters, her nuns who were running the thing, turn the camera on me. One of her sisters replies, but Mother, it's World Youth Day. She said, turn the camera on me. But Mother, it's the Holy Father. Turn the camera on me. You don't argue with Mother Angelica. And that's where she gave her super famous rant against the liberal church. And it was, if you go back and play it, it's on YouTube. Anyway, she just had it with the kind of progressive Catholic movement that sought for women priests and you might say the alphabet people acceptance. And it's not the acceptance of the behavior, of course, and all sorts of things that Mother Angelica, as a traditional Catholic, was fighting. And then she decided to, instead of caving in to what the sort of progressivists wanted, what certain bishops, cardinals were even demanding she would do, she went the other way. She changed her habit. That means the clothing that they wear, from the less traditional one that sort of ended just like it's like a dress that ends below the knee and a little head covering that's more like a kerchief than anything, to the full old-fashioned habit that goes right to the floor, that's Benedict, and that's beautiful. They changed to the traditional mass. They changed to the mass facing the altar. Like, they basically went hardcore. And when the bishops were so offended, they asked, basically, give us the station. She said, I'll burn it down first. And to me, that was her story, probably inspired more Catholic media apostolates than anything else. It is the story of a heroism, of a ready and willingness to fight the powers that be, of speaking the truth to power in our modern day that's never been seen. The only similar thing was when, and again, a woman, by the way, when Mother Teresa came in 94 and spoke in the US, and the Clintons sitting there and condemns abortion at the UN. So here are these women, both nuns, by the way, showing a heroic courage that really isn't expressed almost anywhere else. It's stunning. And as I said, Mother Angelica's example has started more Catholic media apostolates that are around today still than it's sort of outshone even EWTN itself. And EWTN is massive. Like I said, it's the biggest thing going in Catholic media ever. And yet what she did not only was for EWTN, but it expanded beyond that to inspire literally millions and millions and millions in her wake.
So the stories are riveting. So here's my last question for you. Apart from God and your family, who are people that you want to be a hero for? And by that, I mean, who do you want to be putting all of your energy and effort and the best of who you are and what you've got in the hope that what you can do will help and serve them and bring about the greatest good possible? And maybe you can lump all that together and call it, try to be heroic for a specific group of people. Who's on your heart? Who do you work for? Who do you aim to serve?
And that's a tough question, because you exclude God and you exclude your family. But I have actually two answers for you. And I'll tell you the second one first, because it's the first one that I think we all should be working for. In the reality of things, which is in the reality of the spiritual world, there is a group of people that we are all called to work for, to strive for, to sacrifice for, that God has specifically given to us to do. And that's to us for everybody. You don't have to be a scientist, smart at all. You can be super disabled, but you still have to work for these people. And you're the only ones who can. God has made it so that the angels can't, the saints in heaven can't, and they can't help themselves. And I'm referring to the holy souls in purgatory, the poor souls, as they were called. In this month of November is a month dedicated to them. They're real people who are in a place where they need your help, my help, to be able to come to eternal life faster, to come to the presence of God faster. It's like they're in an elongated shower, like they need to wash off the dirt, if you will, of the world so that they can enter purely into heaven. They're not going to hell by any means, but they also can't yet enter heaven. We can think of it in terms of time. Like, I've got a 100-year sentence before I scrubbed off enough to get to heaven. And again, they're not going to hell, but they're in a place where it feels like torment. It's harder than the hardest suffering you'll ever have on earth, but it's just to expiate, if you will, or to cleanse you so that you can enter into heaven. God has actually given us the opportunity to help them, to reduce their time, if you will, if you can think of it that way, to much, 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 much less. And so I had to make a plug for the Holy Souls in Purgatory, because that's who we're all supposed to work for. I don't do that enough. I wish I did that more. And so that's one group of people. But there's another group of people that we work for at LifeSite News every day. And that is, it's for, yes, our news service, obviously it's for all the world. But more specifically, we focus on the Catholics who are either not practicing their faith, don't know their faith, confused about the faith, especially in our day, because things are so ultimately confusing. We're in the weirdest time. Even when LifeSite News started, We started in 1997. A couple of years before that, I was already running a news service that became LifeSite. It was just email. I was just like 5 stories a day every day, and they were very short. But even at that time, it was for giving people the fullness of the truth. And in a special way today, we're dealing with a land of confusion, which back in 97, under John Paul II, and then after 2005 under Benedict, we just didn't have that. Sure, we had confusion in the church then, but nothing like we've had for the last 13, 14 years. And so it's become really a super special mission for us at LifeSite News to bring the truth to Catholics who are confused. And it's so much, it's legion. You can't, it's hard to describe. So it's very much a heart for giving them the truth despite the cost and the consequence. And that can be high. And that's why my colleagues at LifeSite News, I admire them so greatly. They're doing heroic work. I'll give you one example. Doug Mainwaring is a gentleman who writes at LifeSite, has for many years now. And he writes on one of the toughest topics. He writes on LGBT. He writes to defend marriage between one man and one woman. And this is super unpopular. But imagine how unpopular it is for a man who was himself homosexual. So Doug, as he says openly, was in homosexual relationships for about a decade and then came out and now lives as a holy Catholic. And it's really incredible. But he, and having been there, done that, is an incredible witness to so many people of you can come out of this lifestyle that's harmful for you. You can live a virtuous life. And no, the temptations don't always go away. But that's okay, because guess what? All the guys on the other side have their own sexual temptations, sorry to say, and they too don't leave. And so we struggle with this stuff till we die, but that's okay, because it's not meant to be a walk in the park. If it was a walk in the park, the prize wouldn't be so great. So yeah, there is that group that we really strive for at LifeSite News, and it's an honor and a joy to serve with basically some of the best people.
Thanks for joining us. If this story connected with you, send it to someone. And if you want to chat with us about anything that we've said, send us a message at heroicmen.org/stories. Our partner at CatholicSpeakers.com has built the easiest way to book powerful Catholic speakers for your men's event. They are the #1 resource worldwide for event organizers and Catholic speakers. Book easily, confidently, and ask for several grants to support ministry to men. Visit heroicmen.org/speakers today. Come and share your journey in the Heroic Brotherhood, our online community for Catholic men like you. Get the app with the best Catholic media for men, including Heroic Men's original series, Be a Man. It's all free, because an alliance of donors already paid it forward for you. Stand with us. Let's build the future of Catholic men. Will you pay it forward? $5 a month pays it forward for 5 men. Visit Heroic Men to stand with us. Because men like us, we leave no man behind. Visit heroicmen.org today.